Modeling quadratic functions. So we want to learn how to write a quadratic function in vertex form from the graph of the parabola below. So the first thing we need to do is identify the vertex. So here's our vertex. So we want to identify the coordinates 2, -3. And then we want to substitute those values in to the vertex form. Y is equal to a times x minus 2 squared minus 3. Then in step 3, we're going to use another point x, y. So here we have this point here. I'll just write the coordinates down first, 0, 1. And we're going to substitute that into x and y into our equation. Then we want to solve for a. So we have 1 is equal to a times 0 minus 2 squared minus 3. So let's solve this equation for a. 1 is equal to 0 minus 2 is -2. -2 squared is going to be positive 4. So we have a positive 4a minus 3. So to solve this equation for a, we want to add 3 to both sides. And then we have 4 is equal to 4a. And then divide both sides by 4. And then we are left with a equal to 1. So our final step is to actually write our equation. So we have y is equal to 1, and since a is equal to 1, we actually don't need to write that one. X minus 2 squared minus 3. And this is our final answer. So let's walk through one more example together. So we want to take the vertex and the point on the graph and substitute it into our equation. So first, remember, this is our equation in vertex form. So let's substitute our info. The x and y coordinate, -1, a is what we're looking for. Our x is -4, minus, since h is negative, we're actually going to make this plus 2 squared plus 3. Now let's solve for a. -1 is equal to a times -4 plus 2 is -2 squared plus 3. And then again, -2 squared is positive 4. So we have 4 times a plus 3. Let's subtract 3 from both sides. And then we get a -4 equal to 4a. If we divide both sides by 4, then we are left with a is equal to -1. So our final answer is going to be the equation y equals negative x plus 2 squared plus 3. Now I want you to follow those same steps, try example 2, and check back with me when you're finished. So hopefully you got an answer of y equals 2/3 times x minus 4 squared plus 5. So remember, you have to make sure you plug in your coordinates correctly. Make sure the vertex always goes in for hk, and then your x and y coordinates go in for x and y. And then make sure that you're doing your algebra correctly. And then again, when you come down here, when 6 doesn't divide by 9, you always want to leave your answer as a simplified fraction. Remember, we don't want decimals. Next, we're going to talk about how to write a quadratic function in intercept form from the parabola given. So first, we need to find the x-intercepts. So here we have one at -1, 0, and our other x-intercept is at 2, 0. So we want to substitute in those values. Now remember, your x-intercepts are p and q. So we have y is equal to a times x, and remember this changes to a plus 1, and then times x minus 2. Then we want to use another point that we have. So we have this point here, 0, 6. And then we want to plug that in for x and y, and then solve for a again. So we have, for y, we're going to put in our y coordinate 6. A is what we're looking for. Our x coordinate is going to be 0. And then let's solve for a. 6 is equal to a times 0 plus 1 is 1. 0 times negative 2 is negative 2. So then we have 6 is equal to 1 times negative 2 times a. We get a negative 2a. So lastly, we want to divide both sides by negative 2. Those cancel, and we're left with a is equal to negative 3. So our final answer is going to be y equals negative 3 times x plus 1 times x minus 2. And here's our equation of the quadratic and intercept form of the graph given. So again, let's walk through a couple examples. I'll do this first one with you, and then I'll have you try the second on your own. So we have two x-intercepts and then a point on the quadratic. So we want to start off with our equation, y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. Now let's substitute in our values. Remember, the x-intercepts go in for p and q, so this changes to a plus 1, and this is a minus 4. A is what we're looking for. Our y-coordinate is going to be 2, and our x-coordinate is 3. So again, make sure you substitute all your numbers in the correct places. Now let's solve for a. 2 is equal to a times 3 plus 1 is 4. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So then we have 2 is equal to 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and then times a. So we have a negative 4a. We want to divide by negative 4 on both sides. That cancels, and we're left with a is equal to negative 1/2. Remember, again, we do not want decimals. We want to simplify fractions whenever we can. So our final equation is going to be y equals negative 1/2 times x plus 1 times x minus 4. So go ahead and pause, try example 2, and check back with me when you're finished. So hopefully you got an answer of y equals 5 over 16 times x minus 3 times x minus 7. So again, make sure you're substituting all your values into the correct places, and then carefully doing your algebra work, carefully simplifying your fraction, and then having all the information you need in your final equation. So when we want to write an equation into standard form, we're actually going to use quadratic regression on the calculator to do that. So first I want you to write down these 3 steps. Step 1, we're going to go into stat and then choose the first option to edit. We're going to type our data into L1, where we're going to put the x values, and then L2, where we put the y values. Then step 2, we're going to hit stat, go over to calc, choose the 5th option, the quadratic regression. Make sure that our x list is L1 and our y list is L2, and then hit calculate. Then we're going to write down our equation substituting the values of a, b, and c into the standard form of the quadratic. So I want you to pause, make sure you write down these steps so that you have them, and then check back with me when you're finished to do the first example. So hopefully you wrote all that down. Now before we move over to the calculator, I want you to write this down in your notes. Our first example, we're given 3 points of the quadratic: negative 2, 0, negative 1, 2, and 3, 0. Okay, so now we're back into our calculator. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to hit our stat button and then choose that first option to edit. And in L1, you want to type in your x value. So we have -2, and then -1, and then 3. Scroll over to your L2 for your y values. We have 0, 2, and 0. Make sure you put those in the correct order. And then we want to hit the Stat button, move over to Calculate, and then choose the 5th option, the Quadratic regression. And then hit Enter. Then you have your equation. In the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, we have a equals -0.5, b is 0.5, and c is 3. So we're going to come back here, and you should be on your notes paper now, and write our equation as y equals -0.5 x squared plus 0.5 x plus 3. And this is your equation. Now for standard, we have to use the calculator. These decimals aren't too bad, and we could change those into fractions, but some of the examples that we work with are not going to have such pretty numbers for decimals, and so you can leave them as decimals. Let's walk through one more example together. It says a bank adjusts its interest rates for new certificates of deposit daily. The table shows the interest rates on the first month for January, or on the first of the month for January through May. So it gives us the month and the rate. So when we put this into our calculator, we're going to use the month as our L1 and our rate as the L2. So we want to write the best fitting quadratic model for the data. That's the equation that the calculator gives us. And then we'll move on to part B. So go ahead and write down these values at least, so that we can switch over to the calculator and find our best fitting quadratic model. So when you switch over to your calculator, remember, our first step, we want to hit Stat and choose that first option to edit. And you probably have your data from the previous example problem. So remember, scroll up to the top and then hit Clear, Enter, and then we want to move over, scroll up to the top where it says L1, hit Clear, and Enter again. Now they're empty, so we can add in our new data. So for L1, we're putting in our months. We had month 0, month 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we were putting our interest rate into our L2 column. So we have 3.9, and then 4.4, 4.6, 3.8, and then 3.1. And again, when you're finished entering your data, take the time to double check and make sure you put everything in correctly, that the pieces of data line up so you have the same amount of data in each column, and that the numbers are typed in correctly. If you forgot a decimal point for any one of these, it would completely throw off your equation. So make sure you're very careful about that. Now, after we've put in our data, we want to hit Stat, move over to Calculate, and the 5th option, Quadratic regression, hit Enter, and then here's our equation. So this is what I'm talking about. These decimals are not so nice. So we're always going to round to the nearest hundredth. So remember, that means you write 2 digits, but you might change that second digit if the third one is 5 or higher. So now we're back to the notes, and we can write down the equation that we had. So with rounding, y is equal to -0.24 x squared plus 0.75 x plus 3.91. Now we can move on to part B. It says, using the best fitting quadratic model you found in A, find the interest rate for 5 months. So remember, we used our month as our L1, which was our x coordinate. So we're just going to take our quadratic from part A and we're going to find what the rate is going to be at 5 months. So we'll take 5 and substitute that in for x. Now after you substitute it in on your paper, sorry, I forgot to substitute this one in. So let me change that x to a 5. Once you plug in your value, you can go ahead and put this entire side into the calculator. So make sure you type this into your calculator very carefully. And again, as I've said over and over and over again, you need to make sure anything in parentheses shows up in parentheses on your calculator. Once you plug that all into your calculator, hopefully you got an answer of y equals 1.66. So that's going to be the interest rate at the 5th month. So I want you to go ahead and try this example on your own. Take these 3 points that are on the quadratic, use your calculator, follow the steps, and find the best fitting quadratic model, and then check back with me when you're finished. Hopefully you found your equation to be y equals 2x squared plus x minus 4. That's it for these notes. I'll see you in class.